Hello, everyone, and welcome to Concordia Live. My name is Joe Milbank, one of Concordia's programming associates, and I'm so pleased to have you all here with us today. A special thank you to our global patron member, USA for UNHCR, for organizing today's important discussion. In honor of World Refugee Day, this Concordia Live will discuss the enormity and complexity of the global forced displacement crisis and the importance of focusing on the individuals affected. While bringing light to the plight of refugees, this engaging discussion will feature newly released global, regional, and national data on forced displacement, while also exploring the shared human experience of refugees through the power of storytelling. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees are automatically muted upon entry, but we hope that you'll take advantage of the chat feature to introduce yourself, react to comments in the discussion, and engage throughout the conversation. To ask a question, please utilize the same chat function at the bottom of your screen. We will be answering questions later in the webinar. Lastly, this webinar will be recorded and available on Concordia's webpage and YouTube channel. Now, without further ado, I'm honored to introduce today's moderator, Suzanne Ehlers. Suzanne is an established philanthropy leader with over 20 years of experience serving global populations at risk, including refugees and displaced people. She is currently the executive director and CEO of USA for UNHCR, where she leads an organization that provides a platform for refugee voices and allows compassionate Americans to show their support for refugees. Prior to joining USA for UNHCR, she was the CEO of Malala Fund. She's held numerous board and advisory positions, and early in her career, served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Central African Republic. Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you, Joe, for that generous introduction. Welcome, everyone. It is wonderful to see you in this virtual world. I know it can feel hard to be as connected when we're not live and in person together, but I hope the engaging conversation will pull you right in. Joe did a great job of introducing me, Suzanne Ehlers, proud executive director and CEO of USA for UNHCR just since January, so new in the role still. And I'm going to remind us that June 20th, just a couple of days ago, marked the annual observance of World Refugee Day. It was first celebrated on June 20th in 2001 to commemorate then the 50th anniversary of the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees. More than 70 years from that landmark agreement, we faced the staggering milestone of more than 103 million women, children, and men that have been forced to flee due to conflict, to violence, to human rights violations, and persecution. That's over 1% of the global population, forcibly displaced and far from their home. The enormity and complexity of the global forced displacement crisis can feel overwhelming, even for those of us who work in this space on a day-to-day basis. It's really easy to lose sight of the individuals affected, but those individuals are those with hopes and with dreams and passions. And so in honor of World Refugee Day, this Concordia Live session will go behind the statistics and the data and bring participants closer to the courageous journeys of the refugees. While bringing light to the plight of refugees, this engaging discussion, we hope, will feature both newly released global, regional, and national data on forced displacement, but also explore the shared human experience of refugees through the power of storytelling. And we have incredible panelists to take us on that journey. What I'm going to do is introduce each of our panelists, so then when we get into the discussion, we can go right to questions and really hearing them take us along their story and experience. So I'm going to start with our first panelist. It's Joung-ah Ghedini-Williams. She's serving as UNHCR's current head of global communications. Joung-ah is both an accomplished human rights champion, beginning her work in the sector with Refugees International during the Bosnian War. She's a first-person witness to the trauma of displacement, as both her parents were internally displaced or relocated by war. Thank you, Joung-ah, for joining us today. Our second panelist will be Malika Saar. She's a human rights lawyer who serves as YouTube's global head of human rights partnerships. She leads the platform's efforts in working alongside activists, nonprofits, and external partners to advance human rights issues, including in the areas of criminal justice reform, gender equality, and racial justice. She was previously Google's senior counsel on civil and human rights. And Methusella Rwabose, welcome, a recent graduate, congratulations, in political science and leadership studies from the University of Denver, also serves as vice president of the board of directors of Colectivo de Paz, a nonprofit organization based in Colorado with a mission to create communities of action that empower working class immigrants, refugees, people of color, veterans, unhoused community members, at-risk students, and other historically marginalized peoples and families in the greater Denver area. Incredible work that I think Methusella will tell us more about. Methusella resettled to the United States from the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2015, and he is the 2023 winner of the USA for UNHCR Storyteller Celebration, which of course we'll tell you more about as the panel goes forward. So Joung-ah, Malika, Methusella, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to get a deeper insight into the refugee experience through data and through your personal journeys. At the end of the program, I am going to open it up to questions. Joe's going to help me kind of moderate and curate that piece. So as they're coming to you, please drop those questions and your excitement about the discussion into the chat. So let's start off, Joung-ah, with you, and knowing that UNHCR recently released its annual Global Trends Report. And I would love if you could start us off by providing a brief overview of the report, maybe highlighting some of the trends that we should be aware of as an audience and some of the key takeaways that will really help us better understand what's currently happening for refugees and displaced people globally. So over to you, Joung-ah. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for USA for UNHCR and Concordia for organizing this really important conversation that we're about to have. As Suzanne mentioned, I think the numbers are so staggering, and sometimes numbers get so big that they become almost too obscure to understand. But what we always try to stress is that behind every single number, there is a person with very real lives and dreams and hopes. And this year, unfortunately, the number is a staggering 110 million people forcibly displaced in the world. It was 103 last year, and the number has increased again due to ongoing conflicts and further human rights violations. Just to give you a sense of the scale of displacement, just in the last decade, these numbers have doubled. And when I started in the refugee sector in 1994, it was less than 10 million people that were displaced. So in the time of the work that I've been doing with UNHCR, we have gone from basically 10 million to 110 million. I've never seen another period where we've had so many multiple competing emergencies. So right now, Sudan is in the news, Ukraine is in the news, Afghanistan, but we have so many other emergencies, Yemen, Ethiopia still ongoing. Of course, we have DRC that continues to escalate where Methusella is from. And it's really difficult because we have all these fresh displacements, but we have much fewer long-term solutions. People are not able to go back in large numbers because safety still doesn't exist. You look at the situation in Syria, which is well over a decade at this point, at Afghanistan, at Myanmar, and the length that people are displaced just is much longer than it used to be, because the peace that they so badly need, that can only be brought about through political measures, is not there. It's just so ever elusive. Just to give you also a little sense, over half, so about 58%, almost 60% of all of the world's forcibly displaced are internally displaced. So we often think about refugees who are fleeing across borders. But if you look at places like Syria, Afghanistan, DRC, Colombia, you're looking at huge numbers of people that are displaced within their own countries, often multiple times. About 30% of the world's displaced are children, and half are women and children altogether. And I think there's a bit of a myth or a false narrative that, you know, all the world's refugees and displaced people are trying to get to Western countries or to the more developed countries. That's simply not true. About 70% are fleeing to neighboring countries. So these are, for example, some of the top three are Turkey, Iran, and Colombia. And 76% of all of the world's refugees are actually in low and middle income countries. So it is very small percentages that are looking for safety much further afield. And I think the ones that are trying to reach Europe, the US, other more advanced or more wealthy countries, they're taking increasingly more dangerous and risky journeys to do so. They are, as we saw just last week with the awful shipwreck off the coast of Greece, people are making impossible decisions. Nobody, especially including, parents and children and siblings, would risk their lives unless the situation is so bad from the country that they're fleeing that seems like the only relevant choice. So with that in mind, I think that, we really do have to consider that behind this 110 million, there are 110 million people just like us. They want the exact same thing. They just want to be safe. They want their children to have access to education, healthcare, a future where they can actually be productive and have stable lives. And also, of course, there are the refugees and the displaced people that are fleeing human rights violations in addition to those fleeing conflict. So LGBTIQ plus refugees, women and other victims of sexual and gender-based violence. These are, women-headed households or people who have been active politically that are now being targeted. These are also groups that have very viable reasons to become refugees or displaced. And as someone who grew up with both parents who were displaced by the Korean War and World War II, respectively, I know the trauma and the long-lasting impact this has on families and generations. So I just am grateful that there are so many people online who are supporting refugees and who are showing their solidarity, showing their interest in learning about the situation and doing something, which is something that can happen at home as well as on the global scale.
Joung-ah, thank you so much. I knew that, first of all, you're so knowledgeable, and I always learn so much from hearing you talk about the work of UNHCR, reminding us of the huge numbers of those who are internally displaced. I think is sort of an important piece of understanding the crisis and the numbers, if you will, and how much those have grown in recent years. And also remembering the countries that play this sort of sometimes unappreciated or at least underappreciated role as host countries. So many of them low and middle income countries, many of them neighboring countries, and you've listed those. So thank you again for taking us kind of not just to the data and the statistics, but also a little bit behind that to really understand the complexity and the human piece of this story. So now I'm going to turn to Malika, and I'm going to dig even a little bit further beneath those trends and statistics. Now, together, YouTube and UNHCR just released a 3-part video series on World Refugee Day, so just a couple of days ago on Tuesday, called We Were Here. And it aims to give people a different way in, again, an opportunity to identify those affected by displacement and connecting strongly with the people that they are, people with hopes and dreams and passions and creative talents and skills. We're going to show the trailer for that series. All 3 films are absolutely incredible, and I strongly encourage you to watch all of them. But we're going to watch the 90-second trailer, and then when we come back from that, Malika, I would love for you to talk to the audience a little bit about the inspiration for the creation of the series, and then from your own perspective, the importance of storytelling in really inspiring solidarity and inspiring action. So here's the trailer.
As a refugee, you have no one? What do you do?
When you come from your war zone and you reach in a country where there is no bullet, of course you feel that you are in heaven. I think that I'm the only person in the world. Then I have found my workmate who have the same passion as mine.
Great art comes from the limitations of things.
It's infectious to spread love.
I've never given up. I also try and get other people to not give up.
When we lost our home, music was our therapy.
We are all struggling to meet the same need. Before you think of going far, start from where you are. Despite being refugees, we have something in common. We are all human beings. That's my message.
Absolutely heart-stopping. The trailer, I've watched it I don't know how many times, Malika, and every time I feel as moved as the first time. Over to you to talk a little bit about the inspiration for that series.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's such an honor and privilege to have this partnership with UNHCR and to be able to advance the work of UNHCR through the YouTube platform. It really has been an honor and privilege. You know, as you pointed out, I am a human rights lawyer by training and sensibility. I did over 15 years in the NGO human rights space. And I came to Google and YouTube because I understood that part of what we do as human rights lawyers is that we tell stories, and we tell stories to document human rights abuses. And we do that so that the world will bear witness. Because when we have human rights abuses that happen in isolation and silence, that's what allows the abuse to continue. And so the importance of telling story and the importance of using platforms, social media platforms, to be able to have global reach in the bearing witness of these stories is, I think, so incredibly important. Part of the inspiration and the reason for this collaboration was to be able to tell the stories of refugees from a place of power and honor and dignity, being able to connect refugees with YouTube creators to tell the stories of our shared humanity. You know, I had an experience at YouTube of doing a human rights summit with our leadership. And we brought together a number of different human rights defenders and scholars to understand better what was happening around human rights abuses on our platform. But we also wanted to better understand how people were being radicalized around hatred on different social media platforms. And so we brought together people who had formerly been radicalized, who had identified themselves as white supremacists. And one of them told the story of being very deep in this rabbit hole of hatred and radicalization. And he was going to go to Greece to be able to capture content of individuals who were there as refugees, to paint them as individuals who were deplorable, individuals who were exploiting the resources of Greece. And instead, he gets to this place where he sees refugees who are mothers and fathers who are struggling to make a way out of no way. And it's what snapped him out of that rabbit hole of radicalization. And when I heard that story, I thought, how do we bring that experience that he had to travel to? How do we bring that experience to people everywhere? How do we interrupt time and space to be able to give opportunity to others to be able to bear witness to our shared humanity, to understand the stories, to understand the beauty, the power, the trauma of individuals who are fleeing their homes in order to find a way out of no way. And so that was part of why we were so honored to be able to use the YouTube platform in this way. It is the best of what we are able to do at YouTube. And it really has been such a deep honor to be trusted by UNHCR and to make this collaboration happen.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I saw in the chat that people are already making sure that they have the link for the series.
Yes.
So no doubt we will provide that. And I ask you to make the space in your day to watch the 3 short films. Malika, what you've just put out there, so much, the process of documenting, the process of bearing witness, the process of stopping the silence, and something that you said at least 2 or 3 times, making a way out of no way, kind of interrupting time and space. And I think that all of us are fast moving, and between jobs and schools and kids and all of the demands, what we really are being asked to do as part of this series is to pause and to, again, reflect, back to Joung-ah's point, reflect on the 110 million stories behind the 110 million statistic, and to really think about in our own lives, communities, and households, what can we do to bear witness, but then importantly to spur action in support of those forcibly displaced. So thank you for a tour de force in a short 5 minutes. That's so appreciated. Methusella, I get to turn to you now. Thrilled to do so. The winner of our annual Storyteller Celebration. So you know a thing or two about storytelling. I know that. We hosted our 3rd annual celebration this year, and it's an opportunity for refugee storytellers and allies, importantly, under the age of 30, to share their courageous journeys, their passions, their inspirations with all of us. So Methusella, for those that are not yet familiar with your story, I'm going to turn it to you and ask you to share your personal story with us now. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come here and share my story. I was born in Democratic Republic of Congo, and my family, my dad was a politician, and with him being a politician, my family was constantly being a target for rebel group, malicious group. And in 2008, when I was only 5 years old, we were forced to flee the country, and we had to go live in a refugee camp in Uganda. And living in a refugee camp was great because I was born in a place where at any given moment, any second, you have rebel groups come to your village and just start firing gunfires. And so I was born into that chaotic moments. And the moment I got in a refugee camp, it wasn't the best living of condition, but it was a place where I felt safe. And I stayed there for, myself and my family stayed there for 8 years. And throughout that time, I didn't get a chance to go to school. And that's all, as a child, what I was dreaming for, but it was something that was so expensive that I could not afford. It seemed like at the moment, because I would see other kids go to school and I would be like, oh, I wish that was me. I wish one day I would be able to go to school. And one of the defining moments really happened in 2015 when we were granted to come to the US. And the moment we arrived, the first thing I asked for was to go to school, because I didn't know how to read, how to write, even my name. And so it was very challenging, but I was like, I need to go to school and I need to make sure I do. And that's all my parents asked of me. And I promised to them that I'll do just that. And so going to school was a major milestone for me, was a life-changing moment, because it's something that I could not have dreamed of. And I could not believe, like, in 4 years I was done with high school and going to university. And now I'm a college graduate, and it's so surreal because I'm a first-gen student, the first one to earn a bachelor's degree in my family, and it's just a life-changing moment. And sometime when I think about it, it's like, I don't know how this happened, but it happened. I worked so hard for it. And I'm like, it's not just that I worked so hard, it's the people who welcomed me in and showed the support and made sure that I have the resources and I'm set up to succeed. It's not like I woke up every day and I have to worry about the next day if I'll find a hot meal to eat, or if I'll be able to go to school, or if we wake up to gunfires. And that was just a very peaceful moment, because oftentimes when I was a child, sleeping in a very good built house, it was a challenge. I could know, so being here, sleep in a home sound and know that I'm in peace, it was so defining moment. And although that might seem like a lot of chaos that I grew up in, and a lot of challenging moments, I don't think I make my stories in no way shape exceptional, because I know there's a lot of millions of kids out there and families who have not been given the same chances and opportunities as my family have had received to come to a country where they can restart their lives and live in peace. And so it's like unreal that I'm here today, speaking to people about my journey and my story, of how I came here, because I know there's millions of other kids who were born in the same situation as me and they're still going through it. And all I can hope for is that this could end and they could live in the same situation that I'm living in, and just get a glimpse of chance as I have, and just see what they can accomplish, because I believe there's so much refugees can offer to our communities in this world.
That's beautiful. Thank you. You've had a lot going on this last, couple of weeks with graduation and World Refugee Day and any number of opportunities that we've been able to partner with you on from the UNHCR side to really lift up your story. And you're doing it even now, sort of again, reminding us of how many children want access to education and want really just the basic safety that you were feeling once you arrived in Uganda. So thank you for taking us back just to that basic moment, right? Just the day-to-day feeling of safety and security and how life-changing and transformative it was for you. So you've told us a little bit about your past and the journey that got you here. Will you tell the audience just a little bit about what's next for you as a recent graduate and vice chair of a board of directors of a very successful nonprofit? What's next, Methusella?
What's next? I'm going to be focusing my attention mostly on the organization I co-founded with my fellow classmates at University of Denver. Because we serve very vulnerable communities. In our city, we have a lot of homeless people, and those are the people and refugees, obviously, who come into these communities, whom I want to help navigate the system, or that sometimes can be challenging for people who do not understand the language. But that's what I'm gonna be focusing on. Obviously, I'm looking for another job as well. I'll be doing both. I haven't found a job, but I'm still looking, and hopefully I find a job so I can keep working both my organization, and also do other job outside of that.
Well, I have no doubt that your job search will be successful. All of us in the audience who have been on the job search know that it can be challenging, but you have already overcome so many obstacles and barriers and have incredible leadership potential. So thank you for telling us a little bit about what's in store for you. Amazing to our panelists. Thank you for taking us on a bit of a journey. And I know that we've got an active set of participants in our audience. So I'm going to look at the chat and look at some Q&A. And I'm going to put some questions out there. And Methusella, I've got one for you right off, if I might start with it. It says, what support did you receive as a learner who was starting school at an older age, kind of to help you catch up and be successful? What did that look like? You were so hungry for an education and to start school. What were those first moments of entry like?
Basically the basics. I didn't know anything about school. It was my first time stepping in a building called school, and I will always remember my teacher, Mr. Williams. We were 22 students in one classroom, and none of us knew English or knew anything about school, and we just started learning from each other. And we went back to the basics, elementary school, how to write names, do the ABCDs and all that. And so those were the resources that my high school had, because I started in high school, I was 15 years old. And yeah, so just learning from, like, I'm in kindergarten, but in 1 year I picked up English and I was taking advanced classes.
Thank you for that. People are curious about your job prospects as well, too. So at a later point, I'll give you a chance to give just sort of a quick description of the kind of roles that you'll be looking for, and maybe people in the audience can help. So I see also another really good question in here, and Joung-ah, maybe I'll partner with you on this one, asking about the US government fulfilling its pledged commitments of funds to the UN, especially for refugee programs. And since I'm based here in the US and we just hosted a beautiful event on Capitol Hill in partnership with UNHCR last night, I will say that the US government is an incredibly generous supporter and advocate for the programs that UNHCR implements around the world. One of the biggest government contributors to UNHCR's program. So that's on the public sector side of things. And then my organization helps leverage the private funding from generous Americans and from companies and other business partners. Joung-ah, is there anything that you would add to that, to the question that's really about the US government fulfilling its pledges and aspirations as it relates to refugee programs?
I would say one of the things that we value the most, in addition, of course, to the continued and steady financial support that we get from the US government, is that they often are one of the biggest donors that allow for unearmarked funds. And the reason this is so important is that as soon as Ukraine happened, we got more voluntary contributions than we ever have before, because it was in the news, it was so dramatic. But I can tell you that, for example, Sudan, which now has erupted into an emergency situation, had less than 5% funding as of this year, the start of this year. And so it's governments like the US, as well as private donors, individuals, foundations, and companies, who've actually given the most in terms of funding, saying, you use it where you need it the most. And that is so important because, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are so many places that are just as deserving as the Ukraines and Afghanistans and Sudans of the world, but we don't see them, we don't hear about them. DRC and the whole situation around DRC, where we have Congolese refugees in South Sudan, in Uganda, in Burundi, and Rwanda. All of these countries are also very underfunded. So whenever we have supporters, whether it's individuals, companies, or governments who are basically entrusting us and saying, use these funds where you think they're most needed, it really helps us to be able to meet the needs of people in every situation. And I would also say, you know, the US government's firm commitment, not only in terms of what it's doing abroad, but also increasing, once again, its resettlement numbers in the US. I mean, you know, I'm a proud immigrant, American immigrant, and it's the diversity and the wealth of experiences that really allows for the US to be as diverse and unique as it is. And within our communities, I mean, look at what refugees, migrants, immigrants are bringing to the host countries anywhere in the world. You know, it's food, it's culture, it's different perspectives, creative approaches, innovation, you know, this striving to really contribute. So I would definitely say that there is a lot that the US is doing globally, but also domestically as well. And local communities and, you know, schools, faith-based groups, they're really doing so much to make refugees feel welcome and supported, as they did with Methusella when he arrived in the US.
That's a great response, much more comprehensive than mine. Thank you, Joung-ah. A couple of questions keep coming in around what can I do? What can I do to help refugees? What are recommendations? And I'm sure that each of you from your different perches, both personally and professionally, have either some ideas on this from your own lived experience or things that you've witnessed within your own community. So I'm going to do a quick round robin and ask Malika, you first. What ideas do you have for the audience of ways to sort of get more engaged and to help refugees and those who are forcibly displaced?
You know, often when we partner with NGOs around the YouTube platform, the request that NGOs will have, and rightly so, is being able to fundraise for their organization, which of course we want to support our NGOs across the board. But UNHCR has been very, very deliberate in saying that part of what needs to happen as a result of the series is to encourage people to think about how they in their own spaces can support refugees, whether that is doing tutoring, literacy work, opening up their homes, really thinking about how we can take all of the opportunities, gifts, and resources that we have as individuals, as communities, and be able to offer that to those who are refugees, and to create this space for those to feel welcomed, which is also, it's a statement of humanity, but often in times of some of the polarization that we see happening, it's a political statement too, that to give of your time, yourself, your home, your community, is to also resist the language and practice of intolerance that we are seeing in too many places. So I really honor what UNHCR is seeking, which is, it doesn't have to be about contribution in our pocketbooks. It can be about contribution in terms of our spaces, our families, and our communities.
Thank you for that. That's a beautiful answer. Methusella, what are your recommendations? Certainly you had found so many friends and allies and partners in the Denver area and beyond. What are some recommendations for the audience to get more involved in this issue and to really deliver, sort of targeted and focused support to refugee families and individuals?
I think from my experience, like as Malika said, I think just offering to be open to help. I remember when I first got here, we had good doing volunteers who used to come to our classroom and read books for us because we didn't know the language, and that was really helpful. That's one thing you can do, just volunteering to show up to class and read books to new arrival immigrants. Another is just signing up to volunteer with refugees agencies. I remember my family, when we first got here, we were welcomed by the African Community Center, and we had a lot of volunteers who used to come on weekends and just sit with us, share with us about the culture, the American culture, and really take us outside, show us how to get to the stores, how to get to the park to take the kids to play, and all those fun activities. Because when you're new in the country, you feel like you're by yourself, you don't want to leave the house, and it's not that fun in that moment. But if you can go there and put yourself there and say, I'm going to help this family get connected to this new community they're in, it's really a big help. And we appreciate it. A lot of refugees and immigrants would really benefit from that.
It's good old-fashioned volunteering. Really, it's our most important asset, is our time and our energy and our desire to connect. And to hear you tell stories of someone reading books to the children just to get exposure to language is a great example of the ways in which our time can be dedicated to this cause. So Joung-ah, I'm going to move to you with a slightly different question, but not unrelated. And I wonder, as global head of communications for UNHCR for many years now, what's the part of the refugee experience that doesn't get told as often? There's a common portrayal, but what are some aspects of the story that you wish more of our audience members understood?
I think it's exactly the premise that the We Were There films that we've produced together with YouTube portray, which is that we have much more in common. It is very much a shared humanity, and I'm saying this completely genuinely. The refugees that I have met in my 30 years in this work, I have learned so much. They have just been such amazing human beings, and we've connected even when we haven't been able to speak the same language. We've connected because I think ultimately we're all looking for the same things, you know. And I think it is also it is incredibly important to remember that refugees are not looking for the situation that they're in. They had no choice in becoming displaced. And that the fragility of life is something that we see for all of us. You know, we saw that when the COVID pandemic happened, where all of a sudden everything was shut down and we were all kind of in this same situation. So the unpredictability and the fragility is definitely there, and it binds us. The other thing is the incredible tenacity and innovation. Refugees that I have met have just taken such incredible steps at finding their own solutions. One of the things that UNHCR is really doing more and more across every aspect, including in my team and the communications team, is really ensuring that we are co-creating, co-deciding, being guided by people with lived experience in every aspect of our work, because they know exactly what they need. They know what they want. It's just the opportunity and the resources and the support and the solidarity that they need to get there. And if you look at some of the refugees that we've seen in history, you know, I know that we had a very famous poster that showed Albert Einstein that said Einstein was a refugee. We've had so many refugees or displaced people who have made the most incredible contributions to history, to communities, to government, to the arts. So people are coming with a passion, with this desire to contribute and be a part of their societies, a part of their new host countries, and dreams also of returning home and rebuilding their homes and their lives. So I think we just have to make sure that we're remembering that they were thrown into this situation, and that given the chance and the agency, they are the ones that are leading the way in terms of how to integrate solutions and how to move forward in the best possible way.
That was beautiful. Malika, I saw you nodding your head a little bit, so I want to give you a chance to sort of add on to what Joung-ah has put forward, this sort of notion of tenacity and innovations and solutions and kind of a refugee-centered experience. What more would you add there about the sort of the kind of less common portrayal of the refugee experience that YouTube is helping lift up?
Well, when folks see the beautiful series, I think what I really enjoyed was that it is important to tell the story of the violence and trauma done. It is important to give the context of that, but it's also important to center the dreams, the ambition, the agency that individuals have. And I think part of the reason why this was such a special undertaking and why I'm so pleased with the narrative arc is that it does give context to the violence and trauma done to refugees and their families. But it also shows, and I think quite powerfully, individuals who are these amazing transformational creatives, and how that ability, right, to create, to heal in the creating, the place of their agency and power and dreams is just so important. And I think that that's when I started out talking about storytelling that has to be done with dignity. I do think that that was so important to the way this collaboration happened. And I do think that, you know, when we talk about stories as an opportunity to change policy and change our discourse, it's important to make sure that those stories are ones that, yes, so show the violence and the suffering, and also show that people are more than their suffering and what people do out of their suffering.
Beautiful. Thank you for taking us back to a place of healing and of creation. And again, watching the stories, some really beautiful and tender storytelling that gets at sort of the heart of the human experience. We're running out of time. And so my last question is going to be for you, Methusella, in just a few minutes. Tell the audience what you're looking for in terms of career aspirations. We want to know where your leadership and creativity wants to go next. I'll say that there's a bunch of great ideas in the chat, so I hope everybody will take advantage of the resources there. And let me also make a commitment that USA for UNHCR will look at that chat, and if there are specific ways that we can connect you in your communities to some of the opportunities that you're looking for, we will try our best to do so. But I hope people are watching the chat in sort of a quiet moment and just sort of seeing some of the real richness that's happening there. So Methusella, what would be an ideal sort of next step for you, and have this audience be a creative force of good behind you?
I like to do public service. That's one thing I like. I grew up doing that. I used to do that a lot, and I majored in political science just because I wanted to do that. I want to do more of policy research where I can shape and implement very sounding policies where I think a lot of people from like marginalized community can really benefit from. That's one of my interests, but also I would like to keep doing a lot of work with like refugees and immigrants. And so I'm like very open to any opportunities that might come across while I'm continuing to work with my organization as well.
That's wonderful. No matter what community you end up in or what organization you end up working for, you will do good work in the world. So thank you for that. Thank you to all of our panelists, to Joung-ah, to Malika, to Methusella for taking the time to speak with us today, and for a really engaged audience. We can't see all of you, but we know just from the activity in the chat that you're there and that you're moved and inspired by these stories and by this exchange. So thank you for that. Before we close, and with one, we're going to show one of the video in the series, but I just want to point out that we will, thanks to Joe and Concordia, we'll post links in the chat where your compassion can help empower refugees and ensure that they are safe and cared for on their journeys. We also will give you a link to Methusella's video so you can see the partnership that he did with USA for UNHCR to really lift up the story of resilience and courage, and of course, a celebration of his recent graduation. Before we share the last video though, Joe, I think I'm going to turn it back to you with just any additional housekeeping items for our audience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And on behalf of Concordia, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you again to USA for UNHCR, Suzanne, and today's amazing panel for sharing their expertise and for discussing this crucial issue. We hope you found this conversation to be insightful, and we are thrilled that you were a part of it. A follow-up email will be distributed next week with the recording of today's event and the opportunity to connect with today's panel, as well as USA for UNHCR to continue this discussion. Now, as Suzanne said, we hope you'll enjoy this sneak peek of We Were Here. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Our band was founded almost 4 years ago. We were always harmonizing and singing at home, but we never thought that we would be a band. A lot of things were just happening. The doors were slowly opening, and we were going up and up. And the war started in our area. Our home is 38 kilometers away from the border with Russia. You appear in Stuttgart with your sisters. You have no one. What do you do?
I'm still searching for that feeling of belonging. I'm British, but I'm Chinese, Malaysian, and Turkish. So I grew up in a very multicultural household, which was a gift in terms of the exposure I had musically. And I made a lot of friends through music. You have a common language.
буде добре для кожного з нас. In the beginning, it was too much to digest. War, new place, no friends. During the war, everybody got active. And at the same time, Miriam was shutting down.
У мене були дуже жахливі сни, я просиналась у поті.
Я вирішила зробити паузу, тому що мені вона була потрібна.
Я думала тільки про те, що як там мої друзі, як моя кішка, Зоря. Просто я не можу зрозуміти, як це жити далі. Я не можу це зрозуміти.
It was hard moment for us. Music was our therapy. At some point, we were able to buy piano. And I'm like, we can actually create something.
I was writing songs when I was about 13. The music industry was just a wall that I had to climb, so I literally did everything. What I love about that time of my life was that there was just no fear. But now I view it through a different lens. I was actually quite a loner. I'm craving more human relationships. When the opportunity came up to meet these very courageous girls, I was desperate to make it work. I find their journey incredibly inspiring.
We wrote the song You Cry Now before the war. And then we finished it a week before the war started. After that, we're like, what should we talk about? Should we talk about the war again? So we got lost creatively. I don't know what's gonna happen today. We are meeting a brilliant DJ and producer, Jax Jones.
So this tune was like 2 years ago and a lot's happened since then.
When the war started, you forget about the fact that you're a musician, you have to survive, and you're a human being. And since we came here, we were in a different dimension mentally.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Tired. Allowing yourself to live your life and then allowing your music to come in and out of that. You know, you can feel super inspired and then sometimes things happen, you're not. You know, and that's okay, but it doesn't mean you're not musical.
Yeah. During your depression, I just felt the responsibility to write things.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
You're
it's
so
good
lucky to have each other. And
Yes, it's about sisterhood.
Yeah.
Great art comes from the limitations of things, you know, like I feel hopeful. I hope you do too.
Same, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, come on. Oh, bring it in. Well, we'll be exploring today. We're going to be jamming, right?
Yeah. We're no longer getting in, but vibes in a space.
that's nice. Trying to find the groove of it, like.
It's like summer vibes.
Okay, so that's our loop, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, great.
I don't want nobody bother me. Better fix your vibe or get another me.
We're no longer letting in, but vibes in a space.
You're toxic. Someone call me taxi. It's impossible to dive into Black Sea.
As we were recording, we forgot about being a refugee or war in Ukraine. This is something special. For us, it's huge.
Today is as important for me as it is for them. All my interactions with them have been incredibly warm and they seem really lovely and optimistic, even with everything they've gone through.
Almost every week, we celebrate Shabbat with our host, and it's such a blessing. We used to do that at home, and we appeared in a place with people that also have the same values. The meaning of Shabbat is light comes on Shabbat day to the world, and the more people celebrate Shabbat, the more light is in the world. So it's infectious to spread love. Shabbat Shalom. Our beautiful family. We are very grateful to have these moments. Feeling extremely blessed to have you. When I came here, I was completely scattered mentally, and my whole family was the same. And we're extremely grateful for you hosting us and give us a home when we lost our home.
No more cry.
No, now happiness only.
Давай.
What is a refugee? I have changed my location. That's what it is. It doesn't make me less human. I feel very proud to embrace my identity. Before we were Ethiopian Jewish girls that were living in a Slavic world. And then we appeared in European world as a refugee from Ukraine. It's hard even for us to digest it.
Що ми об'єднались, що наш народ є єдиним народом.
Так, а я ще мрію приїхати до Харкова, поїхати погуляти і друзів навідати.
Ой, як я сумую.
We shouldn't forget about the most important things. Humanity, love, and who we are to each other.
I think I'm allergic to negative people. Think I'm allergic to think I'm allergic to negative. 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 Think I'm allergic to think I'm allergic to negative. Think I'm allergic to negative. Think I'm allergic to